Welcome to the Nevada Patriot Podcast with Matt Sadler.
Welcome to another episode of the Nevada Patriot Podcast with Matt Sadler. I can't believe we're getting close to November and the holiday season. 2023 so far has been a blur. Well, I forgot to shave this week, so we're doing an audio show. So apologies for that. Welcome viewers on Rumble, YouTube, and the NevadaPatriot.com, and welcome all you listeners on KWKIRadio.com and 97.7 FM in Pahrump. I appreciate you spending some time with us today. We're going to get into some national topics, some local topics. Presidential filing periods in Nevada have ended this month, and we hope to provide some clarity on what the media kind of refers to as Nevada's first in the West elections. You know, we used to call it the first in the West Caucus, but now it's changed a little bit due to Nevada law. Things changed, and we're going to kind of explain some of that stuff. So what exactly is the presidential preference primary? What is the presidential caucus? Which one should you participate in? We're going to hopefully clear up some confusion and add some insight on that. Some of my thoughts on that: if the GOP here in Nevada, the state level, really is favoring Trump, the rules that they set forth for the candidates during this election cycle for February are a little bit peculiar, and we'll kind of explain why. So first, I want to kind of explain what exactly a presidential preference primary is. So prior Nevada law, pushed heavily by a heavily majority of Democrats in our state legislature, made it state law that we have to hold a presidential preference primary early in February on election years. So on presidential election cycle years. So that would include, obviously this one coming up for 2024. It would be scheduled for that Tuesday on February 6th. So the first Tuesday in February is how the state law is written and carried out. However, it's been challenged in court and found that as far as the GOP party and major parties, state law can't mandate the selection process by which those parties nominate their candidates. So in essence, what you're going to have with the presidential preference primary on the 6th of February, and early voting, I believe about a week, it starts about a week or so before that, is going to be a glorified straw poll. And the way that the rules are by the state GOP, they said that any presidential candidate that is on the ballot for the presidential preference primary cannot be in the running for the presidential caucus that will happen 2 days later on February 8th. So the caucus is different than a normal primary election in that it's going to be one day starting at 5 p.m. on Thursday, the 8th of February. You have to be in person. There are no same-day registrations, so nobody who's nonpartisan or a Democrat can just register on the 8th of February and participate in the caucus. Now, the caucus is going to be what binds the delegates, or what binds the state of Nevada to award the winner of the GOP primary election. So just to break it down, there's definitely two different sets of candidates for each of these processes. So in the presidential preference primary, which the winner will not actually get a chance to quote unquote win Nevada and have delegates at the convention actually go toward nominating the actual presidential candidate for the 2024 general election. These three candidates that are so far, the major candidates anyway, that are in the primary are Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, and Mike Pence. So whoever wins that presidential primary, and I would have to say that Nikki Haley is probably the front runner in that contest, will have ceremonial bragging rights that they are the primary winner in Nevada, but nobody is going to be bound at the actual national convention to have those delegates go toward that candidate. The state party has made it very clear that only the winner of the caucus, the one-day event where there is no early voting, there is no mail-in ballots, it's in person on February 8th. Locally, you have to be there in person on that day to participate. The winner of that race is who will ultimately become the nominee or the favored nominee for the state of Nevada, for the presidential primary. Hopefully that clears some things up. So the candidates that are involved in the caucus, which is the one that's going to actually quote unquote count, is going to be Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, who just recently announced he'll be in the caucus, Vivek Ramaswamy is going to be in there as well as Doug Burgum and Chris Christie. So those are going to be the 5 major candidates that are involved in the caucus. Now, the caucus participation came with a hefty price tag set at around $55,000 per entry into the caucus, which, in my opinion, kind of alienates some candidates. But evidently these candidates have enough money in the bank and their campaign funds that they can go ahead and book that, no problem. So obviously the favorite in the caucus, I would have to say, is going to be Donald Trump. Like I've said on previous shows, his base, which is a hefty base, right around 40% of the Republican voting bloc, I would say, would, sit through a tsunami, sit through rainstorms, sit through tornadoes to go vote on the same day for Donald Trump if they had to. He's going to have such a loyal contingent that I find it almost impossible that even if you added up the vote totals for every other participant in the caucus, I bet it doesn't add up to Donald Trump. I bet he gets not only a plurality of the votes during the caucus, but I would say a majority. I think he's going to get a majority of the support in the caucus, and that will ultimately be who we're bound to as a state to support as the nominee for the Republican presidential candidate. So that's really what it's going to come down to. Now, I think it's no secret that most of the power base, the power brokers, the power players in the state of Nevada at the state GOP level are, by and large, Trump supporters. I mean, it's pretty evident that they are. I think if you engage in politics, even at the micro level, at the surface level, you're going to see that there's definitely a tilt toward Donald Trump. So it kind of boggles my mind that the state party kind of put constrained the candidates and made them pick or choose which event they were going to participate in. And there's been confusion about that. I mean, I've been talking to people and they somehow get confused and they're telling me that, well, they're telling us we can only vote in one or the other, but that's not the case. You can participate and you can vote in both. The restrictions come down to the candidates themselves. The candidates cannot be on the ballots for both the presidential preference primary and the caucus. You can participate as a voter in both if you like, and I encourage you probably to do that, to exercise your vote, in both of these processes. I know I am. But with that said, by restricting Trump, for instance, from being on the presidential preference primary ballot, what we're doing in the state of Nevada is we're opening up another avenue where another candidate who is not Trump or not DeSantis, not Vivek Ramaswamy, can win that presidential primary and still get some substantial boost from that primary, even though they won't get the support or the delegates to actually bind them in a nominating process for the state of Nevada. It could help with fundraising. It's going to help with the optics of their campaign. It's going to help with, it's definitely going to help with their ability to be more prominent on TV, get more interviews on the different outlets. as a more viable candidate. And early on, this is when they're going to need the momentum. And this avenue gets opened up for another candidate who's not Donald Trump, or who's not even in the big three. I call them, DeSantis, Vivek, and Trump really are the three front runners in my estimation. It's going to open up an avenue for someone like Nikki Haley to fundraise better, to become more prominent, to drag this thing out, and ultimately to have a candidate like Trump, if he's a clear front runner, have to stay in this primary longer, spend more money, more time before we can kind of coalesce around a front runner, around the eventual nominee. So I think that's a little bit of a miscalculation by our state party and by the people that set the caucus up and the parameters of this. I don't. I myself am heavily leaning toward supporting Donald Trump because I believe, he's one of the few people on the planet right now that can probably bring some stability to this unstable world that we're living in. I mean, when you look back to his tenure as president, on how we were perceived on the world stage, our role on the world stage, the world as it was as a whole being so much more stabilized than it is now. And you can look no further than the recent events. Now, no one can play, the Monday morning quarterback, or the person who can look back in time and say, well, if Trump was the president, we wouldn't have any problems with Hamas and Israel right now, or we wouldn't have the issues we have in Ukraine and Russia. But I can tell you that my gut says that we wouldn't have nearly as much problems in either of those two areas of the world if Donald Trump were still the commander-in-chief here in the United States of America. This military intervention that we're continuing now, basically, now we're going to be involved pretty heavily on two fronts, it appears. So how do we feel about the quote-unquote of funding wars, multiple wars at the same time, both in the Middle East and in Ukraine? So even if you take the moral aspect out of it, as in, is it the right thing to do? Is it the wrong thing to do? Is it morally virtuous to be involved in it? How can we sustain this? How can we realistically sustain this? I mean, we have dire circumstances with our own national security, along with crushing debt, supply crunches, and it's absolutely unsustainable inflation that we're battling. I just don't understand how we can keep the same posture. And how moral is it to mortgage our future generations' prosperity on what I view to be sometimes hypotheticals? Growing up, I always believed in the world politics view that Israel is definitely necessary for the stability of the entire Middle East. It's kind of like a linchpin. If chaos ensues in the Middle East and Israel's not there to be a buffer, there's nothing stopping it from kind of spreading throughout the world, and that would be a bad thing. The same argument's being told right now. We have to help Ukraine battle Russia over there, so we're not battling them over here, or we're not sending our troops to die over there. And I think these hypotheticals that we've bought into as if they're absolutely true, I don't know if that's the right thing to do. Now, if we had all of our affairs in order, these things can be deeply considered, and I think they not to say there's any, I'm not minimizing the turmoil and the pain and the suffering in both Ukraine and Israel. I'm just saying, when we have epic failures here in our own country, our borders under siege, who knows who's sneaking into our country? We know for a fact drugs are pouring in. We know for a fact the sex slave sex slave trade is amplifying. There's child trafficking going on. We know these things to be true. We know there are people that do not have the best interests of America crossing our border. At the very least, you have more and more people that we have to take care of as a country, more and more people that we cannot vet, that are going to utilize resources, that are going to take from the producers in our country and not necessarily always give back. These are realities that we have to face, that we have to get in order before we start solving the world's problems. And that might sound harsh, but at the same time, wherever you are in your life right now, you live in a town like Pahrump, or you're listening in Las Vegas or somewhere, you have your own household, right? There's always going to be somebody on your street, in your neighborhood, in your subdivision, in your zip code that has needs that are far greater than your own family's needs, right? That they might be having their air conditioning cut off soon. The electric is going to get shut off at their house. They're going to, get foreclosed on. They can't afford to pay the rent. They're going to get evicted. Now, is it okay for you as a neighbor, as a friend, as a citizen to help them? Sure, that's a moral thing to do. But if your own house is in shambles, if your own children are in turmoil, if your own marriage is falling apart, if you're facing problems with your bills, if you can barely afford, if you're borrowing money to pay for your basic things and then you're going to borrow money to go take care of the problems of your neighbor, is that a moral thing to do when you can't take care of your own household, when you're in shambles? And that's how I view our country. And by any objective measure, that's how it is in our country. So you have to ask yourself whether or not these are virtuous goals, to stabilize Ukraine, to stabilize, not really to stabilize, because Israel is still relatively stable. But what they're doing is they are they're under attack. And is it the virtuous and proper thing to do to deploy so many resources in that area when we are basically sitting ducks? It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when something similar is going to happen in our own country. I mean, you can almost guarantee that. Should we be more focused on buttressing ourselves and securing our own homeland and securing our border and being vigilant in our own communities and with our own police forces? I think that's the no-brainer. That's what we have to do. And then once we can have certain boxes checked, when we have certain stability in our own nation, in our own states, in our own cities and towns, then we can entertain the notions of taking care of business abroad and helping out and giving a multitude of support to allies overseas. Those are my 2 cents on that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to get into some more local happenings here in the community of Pahrump. So stick around. Veterans Crisis Line. Dial 988. Veterans Crisis Line. Dial 988. Then press 1. Someone is available who cares. Someone is available who will listen. Someone is available who will help. Veterans Crisis Line. 988. Thank you for sticking with us, and welcome back to the Nevada Patriot Podcast. And I am your host, Matt Sadler. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that's been happening and some of the stuff that's going to be happening here in our community real quick before we wrap it up. This weekend, I had the honor of not only going to and attending the Pahrump Valley Republican Women's fall fashion show on the 14th, but I got to speak there, which was cool. It was a great time to actually celebrate womanhood in a time when womanhood is not celebrated in our country. We're actually having dialogue on what womanhood is, or what a woman is, who's female and who's male, and it was kind of good to kind of get back grounded in a nice event that was not only celebrating the femininity of women, but also the strength and the value of women, young women, mature women in our community, in our nation. So kudos to the PVRW. They put on a cool event, and thank you to Sunflower Fashions also for putting it together and dressing up the models and all that stuff in the clothing. A great local boutique, a great local shop here in Pahrump, Sunflower Fashions. Definitely check them out if you haven't already. And also upcoming November 9th, we're going to keep letting folks know about it. The debate and town hall being held at the Bob Roode Community Center here in Pahrump. It's going to feature U.S. Senate candidates, U.S. House of Representative candidates, and Nye County Commissioner candidates. So on an upcoming show, we're going to kind of announce the lineup that we have so far. But we're pretty happy with the participation and the interest from different candidates so far. But if you are a candidate, or if you know of one, please let us know who's interested in throwing their hat in some of these races. We'd like to get them involved in not only in our grassroots conservatives group, but also involved in this debate. If they can reach out to me, that would be fantastic. Links for my contact information on the show are in the description and at thenevadapatriot.com, or you can call or text 775-382-2516. Also, scheduling, speaking of which, U.S. Senate candidate Barry Linderman is going to be a featured guest here on our next Nevada Patriot podcast episode, so make sure you tune into that one. That episode should be dropping a few days after you're hearing this one. Again, his name is Barry Linderman. He's running for the GOP ticket, on the GOP side, for the U.S. Senate. We've already interviewed a few different U.S. Senate candidates. Hopefully this interview will be equally enlightening, and you can get to know the candidate and decide that. And Barry will be participating. I can tell you that he's RSVP'd to be one of the candidates at the debate. So has Stephanie Phillips, Tony Grady, and also William Conrad. So those are the RSVPs so far for the U.S. Senate portion. So thank you, candidates, for participating in that. I guarantee it's going to be an enlightening and joyful time. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. You're going to get a chance to put your best foot forward, most definitely. So we're going to close off the show by making an important announcement. A save the date, December 17th. That's a Sunday, December 17th, 2023, starting at 1 p.m. at the McCullogh Rodeo Arena here in beautiful Pahrump. We are going to feature a pro wrestling event with pro wrestler Sin Bodie, who now is a Southern Nevada resident of Pahrump. He's going to be co-promoting for this event as well. And it's kind of funny that yours truly is now officially a wrestling promoter. How cool is that? So we hope that you have a chance to come to this show on the 1st, at 1 p.m. on December 17th. It's going to be the first time, I believe, pro wrestling has made its way into our valley. It's going to be a free event. That's the most important thing. Absolutely free admission for adults and children. Families. It's going to be family friendly, but it's going to be entertaining. So make sure you show up. Proceeds for some of the food sales, some of the affordable concession sales are going to benefit all the proceeds are going to benefit a local charity out here in Pahrump, U-Turn for Christ Ministry. They do a great job out here. So we're looking to hopefully, put a few dollars toward them so they can continue to do the service of our community that they are constantly performing. Hats off to Pastor John Jimenez over there. He does great work, hard job, oftentimes very thankless job, but nonetheless, he's in the trenches, really making a difference in the lives of people in our community, families in our community, and ultimately in eternity. That's the goal, right? Preaching the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ to people who need it. God bless you, brother. I'm praying that this is a fruitful endeavor and that we can raise some money for your ministry, because I know, in addition to the blood, sweat, and tears, it's actual money as well is one of the things that you give freely. So we want to come alongside of you in that endeavor. We're also going to be encouraging folks to bring canned foods or, non-perishable boxed foods to the event as well. We're going to be trying to completely stock the Salvation Army food pantry, and hopefully any overflow out of that can go bless a lot of the local food pantries in our community as well. So come on down. There's going to be goodie bags for the kids. It's Christmas time, so we're hoping this can be a blessing for the community, entertainment for the community, and something that we can bring, every Christmas season to our community. So be on the lookout for that. We're going to be promoting that. You'll see promotions all over social media, hopefully on the radio, television out here. Spread the word to your neighbors and friends to save that date, December 17th. It's about a week or so before Christmas. Kids will be out of school, so they won't have to worry about, waking up early the very next day for school. So it should be a good time and good timing for an event like this. Thanks a lot again, Sin Bodie, for co-promoting this with me and bringing forth all the talent and all the bells and whistles of a great wrestling event. Check him out on social media, on YouTube if you can. It's spelled S-I-N-N, Sin Bodhi, B-O-D-H-I. You can YouTube him. I'm sure you're going to find lots of cool content out there. So we're going to kind of wrap this show up now, and we appreciate you for staying with us, and we pray that you have a good day. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening. Tell a friend and join us next time. After you catch your breath, check out the NevadaPatriot.com for more content, advertising opportunities, and to give listener feedback. That website again is the NevadaPatriot.com. Until next time, Patriots, stay American.